Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Homewrecker podcast, where we wreck and shatter conventional wisdom and ways of thinking by bringing alternative viewpoints to light. I am the Golden Greek, Alex Arion, joined as always by my beautiful, lovely, gorgeous, laughing wife, the lovely Monique. I said lovely twice again.
Hello.
How are you?
I can't stop laughing and my face hurts. I'm great. How are you?
Entertained and amused by you.
Oh, my face hurts so bad.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Oh, I have to stop.
Okay. So what exactly is so funny?
Because when we were before we did the sound check, you saying it's the final countdown. So I go, do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. And so then you're like, wait, do that again. And I didn't realize you were doing the sound check.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, that's enough. Like, you just stopped me.
Yes.
And I laughed. And you said how you love my laugh. But just the thought of okay, that's enough. It was really funny.
It was. I said it very abruptly. Like
so abruptly.
Like, okay, that's enough.
But it was so funny. And it just, I don't know why. And then like me doing that, singing the do-do-do-do in my head. And I just thought like we should, not while we're recording, but just like sing it together and it would be really fun. And it just made me laugh.
Okay. And you laughed the entire time the intro was going on. That's fantastic.
I kept like trying to hold my breath. So I
had us on
laugh.
mute. I had it on mute.
Yeah, because I was trying not to laugh.
Because you would have been just laughing through the entire intro.
Oh,
People would be like,
tears.
What's going on? What is this show I'm listening to?
Yeah. Oh.
Anyhow, so what's going on with you? What's new?
I have some group hypnotherapy sessions coming up. So, yeah, I have Saturday, June 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, my Dragon Connection. So we get into a group, I hypnotize you, and you meet dragons. You meet the ones who are most closely connected to you. And I'm also going to have in July a group past life regression hypnotherapy session. So that is something that you will be able to participate if you want on Thursday, July 18th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you go to my website, innerstandingshypnosis.com, you can go to group hypnotherapy and you can scan the QR code or click on the links and book with me.
Excellent.
Yeah. Anything going on with you?
Well, no, not really.
Well,
thanks for asking.
Yeah, we discovered something.
Oh, we have one of our chickens is a rooster. It's not a hen. It's a rooster.
So for those who've been listening lately, you hear the chicks in the background, and they're getting a little bit bigger. We're getting their new home ready. But we discovered over the past week that one of them, the one we thought was our Easter egger, was Athena, is actually now Horus. So, yeah, it's a boy. Opa.
There you go. Yeah, he's been waking us up every morning with his crow.
But he's so cute.
He's so loud.
He's so loud, but he's so cute.
So loud. Golly.
He's so proud of his little crow.
It's fine if it's just once, but he does it over and over again. What was it the other morning? We counted like 16 times in a row that he did it. It's like, oh, come on.
He's making sure that not only is everybody up, but once we're all up, that we are acknowledging that he's doing his job and he just wants to be extra certain in case there's someone else in the house who's not up.
Is that right? Is that why he does it?
That's what I think.
Oh, okay. I thought you guys had
know.
like a cup of tea together or something and he told you this.
Oh, we did.
Oh, got it. All right. Well, speaking of tea, actually, not speaking of tea at all.
Speaking of tea,
I don't even know what.
Are you going to spill the tea on something?
I have no idea what that was supposed to be. I don't. Wow. Yeah, that was fun.
Is it past our bedtime?
Not yet.
No.
But pretty close.
Yeah,
Anyhow, so I saw that there's been some updates with the Vince McMahon situation, the lawsuit that was brought against him earlier this year, and it has been put on hold.
But why?
Because the United States government, I think it was the New York Attorney General, I believe, asked the woman who is suing Vince,
Janelle Grant.
I don't want to say her name, But yeah, they asked her to put her lawsuit on hold, and typically that's done because they're probably going to bring criminal charges against him in some way. That's what I'm thinking.
One could assume.
It's a pretty, I'd say at this point, it's a pretty safe bet because he's been under investigation for a few years now. And so, so they asked her to put her lawsuit on hold, and she agreed to. So it makes you wonder what's coming down the pike for good old Vinnie Mac.
Well, if they go after him criminally and he's found guilty, that to me says her case is going to get a lot easier because he was criminally found guilty. However, if he's found not guilty, I could see that possibly make it more challenging for the civil case to win.
Yeah,
but
I guess
you never know.
There's been a bunch of stuff. I don't know if we even covered, like, there's been a couple of statements that have been made by both sides lately in the press.
Well, John Laurinaitis originally came out and said he was a victim too.
Yes.
And then he flip-flopped to get, because I think, was it Vince McMahon's side tried to say like a bunch of it was all BS. And
of course that's what they said.
No, I know, but he wanted to do something. I forget what it was, and when that
he wanted to throw it out of court and get it to go to arbitration because that was one of the provisions in the non-disclosure agreement that the lady signed. Yes,
and then when that came out, John Laurinaitis sounded like he was flipping back to Vince's side. And
yes, he essentially did. He flip-flopped his initial story.
Yeah,
it's kind of strange how that works, but
it is. And then the other thing was Vince McMahon was selling all of his shares.
Yeah, he sold all his shares, so I guess he no longer. I think he technically still owns stock, but it's been put on the market. And I forget I read about this, and I don't know how to explain it properly, but essentially, I'm going to try to make it very simple. He sold the majority of his shares, so he's no longer a majority shareholder at all in World Wrestling Entertainment, or TKO. And whatever shares he had left, he put, I think he notified the market that he's intending to sell them or something like that, or the SEC or something like that. So essentially, he's dumping all his stock.
Yeah.
He's cashing out. So is that because he's got a big settlement to pay pretty soon? Does he got some big fines to pay? Some big legal fees coming up? Who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Time will tell.
But it should be interesting.
Yeah.
It should be very, very interesting. But I noticed that, or excuse me, I read somewhere that in New York State, where the Attorney General that asked.
Yeah, it's like the Southern District of New York.
Yeah. They have something like a 93% conviction rate. Ooh. So if he does go to court there, if that's where his trial is held, or if there is a trial or whatever, if that all goes through, it's not looking good for Vinnie Mac. It's not looking good. And we know that they just convicted the former president of something. I don't know what.
Yeah.
But so it's the same thing. So it makes you wonder too, like, is a lot of this political against Vince? Is that why he's being targeted, because he's such good friends with the former president of the USA?
Maybe.
Who knows? It's if nothing else, entertaining, I suppose. Since it's not happening to us, it's entertaining.
But not even really. It's just it's so ugly and messy.
Yeah. But anyhow, moving on from that, let's change the subject somewhat.
I was gonna say not too much. Let's keep it wrestling.
So you and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about just I don't even remember how this came up. How did this come up? Do you remember?
We were in the car.
We were in the car driving. Yes.
And were we talking about ribs?
Ribs?
Yeah,
like smoked ribs?
Yes. Barbecue sauce.
Barbecue sauce? No. Yeah. What,
ribbing people?
Like practical jokes, essentially, for the layperson that doesn't get wrestler speak. We're talking about that for whatever reason. And what?
We talked about riots. Something about the time you were stuck in a riot in Puerto Rico.
And how scary it was.
During a wrestling match. I know that came up.
Yeah, we did talk about that. All right, may as well You want to talk about that now?
Yeah, why don't you share that
All
story?
right.
Well, for people who don't know, Alex was a professional wrestler, and he spent time in Puerto Rico wrestling.
I did. Yes, I did a little tour down there, and it was educational, if nothing else. It was a lot of fun. I did have a lot of fun down there, and I had a lot of interesting life experiences down there. Let's just say, saw a lot of things that I've never seen again
Such
since.
as?
Well, I didn't actually go in, but there was a cockfight arena that was there. Actually, there were several. There wasn't just one. There was several, and I always was freaked out by that. I never wanted to go in and see it, but they were always going on.
I'd be stealing all the roosters.
Yeah. Okay. They were always going on, and then there was just the people driving around with open containers of beer, just drinking beer, driving around. It's just different. It's just very different there.
Different culture. We
would drive to the different towns and everything, because down there you were wrestling 7 days a week. Like that was that part of it was great, because you were wrestling all the time, and sometimes we'd have 2 shows on Sundays, and people down there love their wrestling. They just love wrestling. And so driving down there, I remember there was toll booths, on the highway or whatever, and we would get a couple of the guys that we would ride with, they would have like big coffee cans full of change, and it'd be like pennies, nickels, dimes, that kind of stuff. And so we'd roll up to the toll booth, and they'd just grab a handful of change and just throw it in and speed through. And that way, if a cop was nearby, it because the light would never turn green, the little light that, you get the red light, and then once the correct amount of change gets calculated, it turns green so you can pass. Well, it never turned green, but they at least would throw a bunch of change in or whatever. So I remember that, and we never got stopped, surprisingly. So that was pretty interesting, and that's a fond memory I have there. I remember one time in Puerto Rico, stopping and pulling over on the side of the road to relieve myself, and cars that were driving by, somebody threw a drink or something, and it like whizzed by my head. And, this is somebody flying on the highway.
You're like, it whizzed by my head while I was whizzing.
While I was whizzing, yeah. And me like letting the guys I was with know, and they were like, what? And so I get back in the car, and we're on the highway chasing after the car that threw the drink at me, and come to find out it's another car of wrestlers. So they were trying to, play a joke or whatever, the ribbon, if you will. And we're on the highway just throwing drinks and whatever's in our car at each other. Remember, my friend Steve had we call them spittoons. It'd be like an empty water bottle or soda bottle or something that he would use to spit his chewing tobacco juice in, right? And he would take that, and he'd get the cap off, and he'd throw that, and that actually hit the windshield, and they get like tobacco spit all over their windshield. It was just, yeah, that was quite the memory. And I remember one of the scariest things was being in a riot, and it was, again, my friend Steve had flown his girlfriend down from she was from Massachusetts. He flew her down to visit, and Steve was a bad guy, a heel wrestler. And he was very unique in that he had like this crazy hairstyle. He had his hair like all in these weird braids and stuff. And if he put a baseball hat on and he put his glasses on, he almost like changed. It was weird.
He was like Clark Kent himself.
He essentially like, yeah, thank you. That's like the best way of putting it. Where people didn't recognize him. It was amazing to me. Like, how do you not freaking recognize? It's the same guy. Like, what? But people just didn't recognize him. Once he put his glasses on and put his hat on his head, no one had a clue who he was. So he went out because he had his girlfriend situated in the crowd, and we were in Carolina, Puerto Rico. It's like a suburb of San Juan. And it was actually a pretty good sized crowd, probably about 2,500, 3,000 people there in this little, it's like not a little, I say little, but it was like they had indoor soccer arenas, and they had them all over the island. And so in this arena that night, it was a pretty good show. They had a lot of big names that they'd flown in and whatever. And so Steve had already wrestled. And so he showered, whatever, he got dressed, and he went out to sit with his girlfriend in the crowd.
Now, for those who don't know, wrestling is taken much more seriously in Puerto Rico, at least back then. This was in the year 2000. This was in 2001? No, this was in 2000. Excuse me. So yeah, in 2000. This is almost 25 years ago now. So yes, down there at the time, I don't know how it is now, but at the time, people knew that it was showbiz, I guess, but they still, a lot of them, when they'd really get into the matches, because down there they call it blood and guts wrestling. It's not really about the moves and the flips and stuff. It's more guys just fighting. The style down there is a lot of just punching, kicking. It's fighting. That's what it is down there. So people get much more involved and invested in it. And especially in a lot of the local stars that they had there at the time, people down there, they were legends, like Carlos Colon. It was crazy, just the amount. But I did not wrestle for the WWC. There was two major promotions there: the World Wrestling Council, which was Carlos Colon's group, and then there was the IWA Puerto Rico, which was a group run by Victor Quinones and Savio Vega. So I wrestled for the IWA. And they had a bunch of people there. They had a working agreement with the WWF at the time. So they would send talent down there. My friend Steve was actually under contract to the WWF at the time. And they sent him down there to get more experience and to just get him more ring time. And not that he needed it, but they just needed something to keep him busy before they could figure out what to do with him and call him up to TV. And so they would bring a lot of guys down there. Val Venus was down there. Like I said, Savio Vega, a lot of the Bariquas. I don't know if people remember the Los Bariquas was a faction that was in the WWF in the late 90s. So those guys were all there. And that particular night, they had Taka Michinoku and Bad Boy Hito from Japan, who were also in. And so anyway, Steve is out there, and he wrestles his match, and he goes, he showers. And the way that this particular building was set up, they had the locker room had two separate entrances, but both doors led to the same room. Now, unless you were a soccer player or a wrestler, you didn't know that. So the good guys and the bad guys, we all were in the same area, right? But we would come out of separate entrances, separate doors. So into there was the illusion that both sides had their own locker rooms.
Correct. In this particular building, that's how it was set up. Now, in other buildings, there were some arenas you'd go to where there were actually separate locker rooms, and they would keep you separate. So, for example, I'd be in the good guy, the babyface locker room. And my friend Steve he was a heel, so he'd be in the bad guy locker room, the heel locker room. Now, people say, well, how'd you go over your matches? How'd you do it? Well, you didn't. That's the thing. In Puerto Rico, you didn't. You didn't talk to anybody. You just, unless you were in the same locker room, then you could maybe talk over a couple things. But what we would do is we would get, and I can't believe I'm even like talking this inside about it, but wrestling's so exposed now anyway. But what happened was they would have a referee would come in and tell you your finish. Like, okay, Alex, tonight well, actually down there, my name was Chris. I couldn't be Alex Arion because down there, the week before I got there, another wrestler had just finished up and his first name was Alex. So they didn't want another Alex. So I had to be Chris. It's like, oh, whatever, that's fine. All my gear said Arion on it. So I'm like, that's fine as long as I can keep my last name because I was just starting out. I couldn't, I didn't have money to buy new gear yet, or anything like that. So I was Chris Arion. So they would come and they'd tell you, okay, tonight you're gonna go over with a sunset flip or whatever it is. And that's how, and they would say, is there anything you want me to tell the guy you're wrestling? And we pass messages back and forth like that. Like, hey, I might say this. If I say this, I'm going for this, something like that. But you could never get too complicated because you're out there live. You know, you got to keep it not simple, but you have to. And I think that's why the crowd would react much better because it looked so much more.
It didn't look
like a struggle. It was not at all, not even close. And so this particular night, and I'll come back to that. I'll tell a little story after about that. But on this particular night, like I said, Steve showered after he'd wrestled and he went to sit with his girlfriend in the crowd. And so I'm in the locker room. I was still in my gear. I had wrestled, but I had not gotten out of my stuff yet because I was just whatever, hanging out, talking to people, whatever. And so I hear all of a sudden like a real loud commotion going out there. I'm like, oh, wow, what's going on? And so I looked out there because I just wanted to see what's going on in the ring because, wow, the people were really getting loud. And it was very, you could feel it. Like it was just loud and like the energy almost, I guess the best way to explain it was changing. It was like electric in that place. And so I look out and I noticed first that the guys in the ring are just kind of, they're not really doing anything. They're just kind of, one guy's got the other guy in a headlock. And I honestly don't even remember who was wrestling in the ring. But because all the people, you could see all the people around, were all looking, not at the ring, but at something going on in the crowd. And so I'm looking, I see where they're looking, and I turn my direction over and I see they're all looking at Steve. They've spotted him. Somebody spotted him in the crowd. And what happened was, and I found this out later, but at the time, this is what I saw. I saw him standing up, grabbing his girlfriend and like walking with her. And people were like throwing stuff at him, like drinks and whatever they had in their hand, just throwing stuff at him. And so he gets her into the locker room. And then the whole, you see like a sea of people just start coming. Now they were, the way this was set up, they had chairs on the ground, but there was also a set of bleachers. And the bleachers just like emptied and started coming down, and like a mass of people just started going towards the heel locker room. So the next thing I know, Savio Vega's coming. He's like, "Come here, Ariel." And he's like, he grabs me, he grabs two of the other guys, and he's like, go over there to the heel side. Okay. We're in the same locker room, but he's telling us to go over towards that door. And he starts throwing stuff, and Steve's in there. He's got his girlfriend, her name was Carol. He's got her, he's like bringing her like off trying to get her like away from that door. And Savio's throwing chairs around. He starts yelling and screaming and everything. And I'm like, what the hell I'm scared now. Like, what the hell's going on? What are we doing? What's going on? And he's like, come with me. And so he goes, grab Tommy. I'm like, okay. So I grabbed Tommy, who was another guy, like another one of the wrestlers. And he was a heel, this guy. And it was the guy that I had just wrestled earlier that night. So he's telling us, come on. And so now Savio he grabs another one of the heels. He opens the door and all the people there, and Savio's punching the heel, and the people now see this going on in the locker room. And so they start cheering and they start backing away. And so Savio is punching the guy, and now I'm coming out with the other guy. We're rocking the heel, and a couple other guys are coming. So there's like 4 or 5 baby faces fighting 5 heels, and we're just going out to the ring, and the people finally parted. But it was scary because these people were pounding on the doors, and I thought that the door was going to come in and the people were just going to come in. It was nuts.
Well, it's so brilliant on his part
absolutely.
To do that, which, you know, maybe he's been in those positions before, so he knows what to do. But
that's why. But me, I had never seen anything like that before, and I'm just following his lead, and I'm scared. Scared because I don't know what's going on.
You don't know what people are capable of doing, because anyone who's watched, what's that show on A&E that Jim Cornette is often on?
The Territories. Talking about Tales from the Territories?
Yeah,
Dark
that
Side of
and
the
Dark
Ring.
Side of the Ring.
Yeah.
They talk about territories and they talk about the way people were. If you were a heel, you could have been shot, stabbed. Like, people legitimately would want to hurt you.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. And so you don't know what somebody is actually capable of. So here you are. How old were you?
I was 21.
You were 21 years old, and how long had you been wrestling for?
I had only been wrestling for maybe 2.5. No, when was this? Was in 2000. I'd been wrestling for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was very new. I was
So
still
you're pretty
very
green.
very green still. Yes.
And yeah, so you're green as grass, and you are 21 years old. You're still very, very young, and you're in a different country.
Yeah.
With different laws, different cultures, and you are basically thrown into a somewhat of a riot. And while you're protected behind those doors.
Well, that was the big thing, though. The brilliance of what Savio did.
Yep.
He was protecting the kayfabe of the
Yep.
business.
But by doing so, he protected everybody.
Right, exactly. And so what happened was we ended up fighting all the way to the ring, and we overwhelmed the heels, and we send them packing, and the place is happy now. Now they're happy. They've forgotten all about killing Steve.
But that's the thing, because I think with that psychology of, they've got it. They're taking care of it.
Exactly. That's what it was.
Yeah, because if that didn't happen, if they busted through that door, one, they're going to realize the locker room is adjoined.
Yes.
Why are they not killing each other?
They're going to realize the locker room's adjoined. They're going to realize, and that's essentially
all of wrestling.
That's ruined the business.
Yes.
There for the Puerto Rican fans. Yeah.
And then they're already pissed. Imagine how much more pissed they're going to be.
Yes, and then they're going to go after the baby faces and the heels.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, but now the thing about it was we were very lucky, because if they would have got nobody the funny thing about it is, if you think about it, the people never wondered or said, how did the baby faces get in the heel locker room? They didn't realize it's because we were already in there, but it was just the chaos of what was going on. Yeah. It didn't matter. They didn't even, the masses, if you will, didn't even put it together. Because it was
they were so fired up.
They were so fired up, and it was so chaotic what was going on, so they didn't even put it together. But I found out after what happened was, what caused this whole thing was, Steve is sitting with his girlfriend, and one fan noticed him and threw his drink at him, and it missed Steve and it hit his girlfriend. Now, if it had hit, Steve told me later, if it had hit me, whatever, I would have just grabbed her and we would have just walked to the back. No big deal. But it hit her. So Steve got pissed, turned around, and threw his drink at the fan. And that's when all hell broke loose. Because now, the one fan that threw the drink knew it was Steve. But if Steve hadn't have turned around and shown everybody, he made himself then known to everybody in that area, which in turn, now everyone's like, oh, it's mofo. Everyone's pointing, and now the whole arena, it's like a cascades. You see, like, everybody just now pointing, and everybody's wondering, whoa, what are they pointing at? And they look, now everyone's looking there, and everyone starts one by one. They're pointing, and you could see it happening, like everyone just getting up and pointing, and then everyone now. It was crazy. It was it was scary, and looking back on it, it's like, wow, what an experience.
Yeah. It's a great learning experience.
Oh, it was, big time.
I have to ask.
Yeah.
Now, if that was you and Steve's situation, and
yes,
I, as your wife, was there, and somebody went to throw a drink at you, and it hit me, would you have done the same thing?
I wouldn't have been in the crowd. I wouldn't have been in the crowd. I'm serious about that. Enemy, you can go and ask anybody that ever worked with me. I never liked being in front of the people unless I was wrestling, because I mean, now it's different, but back then, especially being a smaller guy, I was always protective of my size. I didn't want people to see how short I was, not because I was self-conscious of it or anything like that. I don't care. I'm very comfortable with who I am and in my own skin. But I didn't want to ruin the illusion of me being larger than life, if you will, because I'm of the opinion, and it still should be like this, people pay money to see somebody that is special, that is not like them. I made sure I was always in shape. I made sure I was tanned. I made sure I always dressed nice going to the building so that if anybody happened to see me getting out of my car and walking into the building, I would look like somebody. I was always very protective of that. I hated signing autographs, whether I was a baby face or a heel. If a promoter wanted me to go out and sign autographs, I did so begrudgingly, and I would do everything I could not to. And I would always be sitting down when I did. I wouldn't ever stand up. I always tried to be protective of my size.
And then you married me, and then I was your valet.
Right. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but yes.
Because I was in high heels.
Yeah. Right. Yes. But whatever. But yes, that's the thing. I wouldn't have put myself in that position because again, I always felt like, no, I don't want to sign autographs, and I don't want to be in front of the people. When people see me, it's just wrestling. And that's it.
Yeah, and I remember in Chaotic Wrestling, before we were even together, you never went out. No. And I thought, because I didn't know, and I didn't think of you as a shorter person, because the way you carry yourself, it's not, you didn't seem like small in any way.
That was by design. I worked very hard to cultivate that persona.
So I just thought like, oh, and then you're like, well, especially like a heel. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Totally makes sense as a heel. Yeah, you don't want to be out there because people would sell their shirts.
I never had
autographs, things like that to make money.
I never had a shirt. I never had an 8x10. I never did it. I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, you could say, oh, I was dumb. You left a lot of money on the table, kid, or whatever. A lot of people would tell me that, and I would always say, no, I want to be perceived as different, as special. So I don't want to have 8x10s. I don't want to have shirts. I don't want to have that stuff. I just don't want it because I don't want to have to sign it. I don't want to be. I only when my video come up on the screen or my music plays or whatever, that's when you see me, and that's it.
And when we were in the car having conversations about how like, you know, you don't want to be out there. And it's funny because we're such yin and yang in some ways where you're like, I don't want to be seen. And then when I was starting in Chaotic as a ring girl, I obviously had to be out there. And, you know, I'm going back and forth with things, and people in the crowd would always want to talk with me. And I would talk with them, and they would give me gifts, and they were so sweet. And it was like, oh, these people are so nice. And I really enjoyed speaking with them. And you're just like, nope, don't want to talk to anybody.
Nope, leave me alone.
I was like, we get together. I'm like, I'll just do all the talking for you.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I would have never been in that position in Puerto Rico because I wouldn't have been out in the crowd.
There you go.
There's your answer.
And even if you were, I probably would have gotten up before you could to throw a drink right back.
Yeah. You wouldn't have let me bring you to the locker room. You'd have just been fighting everybody.
Pretty much.
Boy, oh boy. There was another time in Puerto Rico where I was wrestling. It was actually, I remember now, it was my second night there. And I was wrestling Taka Michinoku and Bad Boy Hito in a tag team match. I might have told this story on the podcast, one of the earlier podcasts. I don't remember.
I won't know until you say it.
Okay. Well, I'll tell it again anyway. So it was myself and the kid that I was tagging with was his first match. He'd never had a match before, and he didn't speak English. And this is my second night in. And so...
I remember this story. Do you remember I don't know if you said it, but I remember you telling me. Oh, my.
So we're wrestling Taka Michinoku, who was on WWF TV at the time, and Bad Boy Hito, he had just flown in from Japan. there were 2 separate locker rooms in this particular building, and it was a pretty big house. There was probably 1,700 people there, 1,800 people. It was just shy of 2,000. I remember that. And the promoter, Savio Vega, comes up to me. He was booking the show. He comes up to me and he says, tonight, it's you, and I forget the kid's name now, but he's telling me, he's explaining to me that he's new. He can do this. He can do this move, and he can do this move, and he can't do anything else. And I went, oh, like he goes, no, he can't do anything else. He goes, that's all he can do. He can't take bumps. He can't do anything but these 2 moves. That's all he knows how to do. He's green.
Do you remember what the 2 moves were?
I don't. I honestly don't. I think it was like a clothesline and a crossbody or something. It was something real basic.
Get into wrestling and not learn how to take bumps.
This was the only time I saw the kid. I never saw him again after this night. So I don't know if he was friends with somebody, if he knew somebody, if he was somebody's student. I don't know, but he was a Puerto Rican kid. I remember he was in really good shape. He was built, but he didn't speak a word of English, and that was all he knew. So Savio's like, you do everything. You do the majority of everything. You sell, maybe give him a tag, let him do this, whatever. And he goes, but you do everything. I'm like, okay, sounds good. And he says, and he goes, and Taka and Hito are running late, but they're on their way. Like, okay, that's fine, no big deal. He goes, so you guys are match 2, but I might have to move you if they're not here in time. Okay, no problem. So the show starts. They're still not there. So he moves us to match 4 or something. Okay, no big deal. So I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because it's my second night in. I don't really know anybody yet, and I'm in separate locker rooms from my buddy Steve, he's in the other locker room, and so I got really nobody to talk to. I'm just kind of hi, how you doing? Trying to make small talk with some of the guys, but again, I'm a new guy in there, and
I just want to remind people, you didn't have text messaging.
No. This was pre having a. I don't think I didn't have a cell phone yet. Nothing like that. Not yet.
Cell phones weren't as popular yet.
Not yet. And so I just kind of remember just sitting there, and I'm trying to talk to the kid. I'll call him the kid. I don't remember his name, but I'm trying to talk to him, and he's just kind of looking at me like, no, see, whatever. He no English, like unless they were working me, but he couldn't understand anything I was saying. So I was trying to mime to him things so that like maybe we could do some double team stuff or whatever, like a double clothesline.
And there was nobody there who could interpret for you?
If there was, they weren't willing to help. Let's just put it that way. But it didn't really matter because we weren't going to be calling much because the other guys were the heels. Mm-hmm. And at the time, you let the heel lead the match. That's how it used to be in the business. And so I was just going to listen to the other guys. And now, I'm now at the time, I'm thinking too at the time, okay, so my tag partner knows no English and it's his first match. And he knows only 2 moves, and he's not supposed to do anything else. I'm hoping Savio tells Taka and Hito when they arrive. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, and they're both from Japan. Do they know English? I have no idea. Nobody has told me anything. So I'm like, if there was a trial by fire ever, this was it for me. Yeah. So holy cow. So I remember match 3's in the ring. We're supposed to be 4, and they still haven't arrived. And like match 3's starting to go home. They're starting to do and I'm like, okay, we're gonna get moved again. So
how many matches were there?
I think it was like a 7-match card. Okay. So they do like 4 and then have an intermission and then another 3. And so I'm in the back. I'm in my gear. I got dressed right away because you never know. I thought it was gonna be match 2 when I first got there, but. Anyway, so I'm trying to stay warmed up and everything, and all of a sudden I hear boos, like the whole place is just booing, and I peeked out to see because there's a little spot where you could look out and watch the show, and so I peek out and here comes you could see Taka and Hito walking through the crowd, and they've got their Japanese flags, and they're holding them up high and they're waving them. So it's like, okay, well, they're here, so that's good. So I'm thinking, all right, we'll probably be on like right after intermission or something. Nope. Match 4. We're going on match 4. Savio comes in. He's like, all right, hey, they're here. You guys are up. What? Oh, okay. Great. So those guys arrived to the show in their gear. I guess they had worked for another promotion on the island. I don't think it wasn't for Carlos, but there was another, like a smaller independent promotion or something that was running on the island, and they worked there first and then drove to this show in their gear. So they arrive, and so anyway, we get in the ring, and again, I know nothing except for the finish, which is those guys are winning, and they're going to take the pin on me, which whatever, that's fine. But that's all I know. And so I start the match with Taka. I tie up with him, and as soon as we tie up, we're in the tie up, and I go, "Hey Taka, Chris Arion, nice to meet you." He goes, "Oh, Taka, nice to meet you." and then I grabbed a headlock, and that was it. Like, just from there, I grabbed a headlock. He shoots me off the ropes. I tackle him, and I hit the ropes. He drops down. Excuse me. He drops down. I go over him. He comes over. He leapfrogs me, and then gives me a drop kick. I go down. I come up, and he's like running towards me, but feeding his arm, so I could tell he wants me to arm drag him. So I give him an arm drag, and that was it. I held him in the arm drag for a little bit, and he goes, "This will be fun. This be fun." I'm like, "Great!" I'm like, I'm just like, "Holy shit! Like, this is crazy! Like, what is going on in my life right now? What is happening?" And I remember I pick him up, I bring him over, I tag the kid in, and I tell Taka, I remember telling Taka, my partner, green, very green, doesn't know anything, very green. He's like, okay. And so I bring him over, I tag in my partner, he comes in, he just like hits his arm real quick, and then he like goes to pick Taka up for a slam, but Taka stopped him because I told him he's green. So Taka doesn't trust the kid to pick him up. And so Taka takes over on him real quick and throws him into the corner, into my corner, and I just tag in and I get back in.
There you go.
And that's how we did it. And I just ended up working with both those guys. And I remember Hito had like this long blonde hair, and he like idolized Terry Funk. So he dressed like Terry Funk, and he had like this bleach blonde hair. He was funny. He was a cool guy. And so the big thing that Taka was doing at the time, he would hit the ropes and drop kick you in the face as his partner was holding you like a camel clutch. And I remember always seeing it on TV and being like, "Oh, that looks like it hurts." And so Hito gets me into the camel clutch, and I'm like, "Oh, here we go. I'm going to get killed. Here it comes." I didn't feel a thing. He didn't touch me. And I found out later it's because he said I was okay. So he took care of me. I was like, "Oh, sweet. That's great." He told Steve in the locker room later, because Steve told him, "Hey, how was my buddy out there? That was my friend that you worked with. How was he?" And he said, "Oh, he good. He took care of me." Like, all right, cool.
It's funny because you say that, and I'm thinking, that's so sweet. And you go, sweet. I'm like, we were just both thinking in different ways.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, that was another example of just like a fun Puerto Rico story and just how different it was down there. But it was just, I mean, when wrestling is done right, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be when it looks choreographed like it is now. It's like
all the flippity-doo-does.
You kind of just like lose any. It's hard to suspend your disbelief.
Before I say what I wanted to say, how long were you in Puerto Rico for?
I was there for 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then I got hurt. I tore my shoulder. I don't even know the exact injury, because down there it was very tough to get straight answers from anybody. But essentially I got clotheslined, and it was taking a simple, very, very simple fall, like a bump. It's called a bump. Taking a very simple bump, and I landed on my shoulder awkwardly. And the guy that I was wrestling with kind of came down with his knee. He like followed through with the clothesline. So when I bumped kind of awkwardly, and then he kind of came down and his knee landed right on my shoulder. And it kind of, I don't know if it tore something. I have no idea, because I went to the hospital. And when I went to the hospital that night, the X-ray technician, the doctor, whoever, I don't know, because I was speaking through. They had a referee go to the hospital with me to interpret, and he said that the doctor who examined the X-rays said that I had the bones of an 80-year-old man.
And why was that?
And I said, what? It was weird because again, I'm 21 years old. Like, what's this guy talking about? And so come to find out it was because I was drinking Diet Coke all the time. And that's like legit. That was what I drank all the time. I would carry around 2-liter bottles of Diet Coke, and I would drink 2-liter bottles of Diet Coke like at all the time. Like that's all I would drink, that and water. But it was more Diet Coke than water. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was young and dumb.
Yeah. And
so apparently there's something in the Diet Coke. I forget what it is, but it can eat away at the calcium in your bones. So yeah, my bone. This guy tells me that. I'm like, what? And that caused me to look into things. Why would that be? What? And the guy actually told me, because I had a thing of Diet Coke with me. And he goes, "That's not good. Not good." I'm like, what? And the interpreter kind of explained, it's something in there. You shouldn't drink it. Like, do you drink it a lot? I said, I drink it all the time. He goes, no, don't. You shouldn't do that because and he showed me the X-rays, and I'm like, that's my X-ray? Like, what? Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I messed up my shoulder, so I went home shortly after that.
So when you wrestled, you were in Puerto Rico for 6 weeks, but you also, where did you stay? Was it down south with Steve for a bit?
Yes, in Memphis.
Yeah,
we lived in Memphis that was it was about 2 months I was in Memphis. And because I couldn't stay much longer because I had a full-time job that I was using all my saved up vacation time to go down there. So I couldn't stay for much longer than that unless they were going to hire me and give me like a full-time job or something. I wouldn't be able to.
And Steve was working for WWE?
Steve was it was WWF at the time, but yes. Yeah, he was there, and that was their developmental territory. It was Memphis Power Pro Wrestling. And down there, again, at the time, they were running, I think it was 6 days a week, and they would have 2 shows on Saturday. Saturday mornings, you would work at TV, which was at the WMC TV5 studios, and at night would be the New Daisy Theater in Memphis. So you'd wrestle twice on Saturdays, and Sundays we'd get off. Most of the time it was Sundays off.
Really? You got off on Sundays? Had to wait till then to get off?
Wow. Listen to you.
It was just the way you said it.
So sorry. We got
Sundays
off. Excuse me. Jeez.
Sundays were a day
Get your
off.
mind out of that gutter. Darn it. But yeah, I was in Memphis for a while. And that was another learning experience. That was a lot of fun.
Any fun stories from Memphis?
There's a ton of fun stories there. I remember watching Jim Cornette beat the shit out of Vic Grimes with his tennis racket for real in the back because Vic Grimes was not selling for him in the ring. It was the funniest. Like, Jim Cornette has like he has a very famous temper, and he lost it on this guy. Like, Cornette would get violent. Like his temper was it was insane. Like, I'm surprised the guy is still alive and doing well, because he should have had a heart attack or a stroke or something with the amount of like anger and vitriol that this guy has.
I love Jim Cornette.
He's the best. I love Cornette.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. But I remember him, just coming to the back, and it was at TV. And I don't remember what the angle was, but something happened, and Vic Grimes just didn't sell something. And Cornette I don't think he was booking. He wasn't booking, but he was there managing Steve. And Steve was in a feud with Kurt Angle. Oh, go ahead.
Jim Cornette managed Steve?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No.
Yeah. He managed Steve.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so Steve was feuding with Kurt Angle, and somehow Vic Grimes he did a run-in or something. And I can't remember if Cornette hit him with his tennis racket or if somebody else hit him with a tennis racket, and he just didn't sell it. Like, he didn't register it, nothing. And so when he came to the back, and this was live TV, so whatever. I mean, after the TV's done, They went off the air. Excuse me. They went off the air with this angle, this big angle. And so when TV went off the air, when they get the all clear, Cornette loses it on Vic Grimes in the back. Just, you fucking stupid motherfucker. I'll fucking kick the fuck out of you. You piece of shit. You motherfucker. You don't belong in my fucking business. Just like going off on him. And I was like, holy shit, like what's going on here? And I remember Steve telling me that Cornette's cool, but he's got a temper, so don't piss him off. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I'm witnessing this now, and I'm just like, holy shit, like he wasn't kidding. And then Cornette is yelling at Vic Grimes, and Vic Grimes is just looking at him like, sorry, like just whatever. Like, he just kind of had like this, like, I don't give a fuck kind of attitude. Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And so Cornette's like, yeah, you stupid motherfucker. You don't want to sell a fucking tennis racket? You don't think it fucking hurts? And he picks it up. He had it in his hand, excuse me. And he like raises it up and he fucking whacks him with it as hard as he can. And Vic Grimes is like, come on, Jimmy, I'm sorry. And Cornette's like, oh yeah, you're fucking sorry. And he turns it so it's not the flat part of the racket, but the edge of the racket. And he starts beating the fuck out of him. Like the racket's all mangled and bent. He's just beating the shit. He's fucking whacking him. He's like, you stupid motherfucker. He's just beating his ass. And Vic Grimes is just taking it. And we're all just like, whoa, all right. Cool. And he's like, yeah, you piece of shit. You fuck you. And he's like spitting on him and everything. And I'm just like, all right, cool.
Wow.
Cool.
What year was this that you were in Memphis?
This was in 1999.
Okay, 99. And
yeah.
you were staying with Steve?
I was staying with Steve, who was feuding with Kurt Angle and living with Kurt Angle.
So you were living with Kurt Angle and Steve while you were down there?
Right, yeah. I was sleeping on their couch. Yep. Yeah.
And how was that?
Oh, that was fun. that was fun.
Can you share any stories?
Oh gosh, we had a lot of stories there. At the time, Kurt had been wrestling for maybe 6-7 months, and they sent him to Memphis and had him live with Steve so Steve could teach him the business, basically how everything works and whatever. And they put them together in a program so that they could Kurt could get used to having good matches and getting used to the ins and outs of having a feud or a program or an angle with somebody. Mm-hmm. And that's why they put Cornette there and everything. So it was just kind of to get them going and help them along. I think it was more so for Kurt than anything. And Kurt at the time was, I don't know if he still has the same guy, but his manager was a former pro bodybuilder named Dave Hawk. And he had him on this ridiculous diet where Kurt looked like he could step on a bodybuilding stage at any time if he wanted to, because he was in just ridiculous shape. He was big, but he was all veiny and just no fat on him at all. He looked incredible. And so he was just very strict with everything he ate. And I remember one time we went out to eat and we were at a Denny's, and he asked for a side order of grits. He got some grits in a cup or whatever, and he had some grits. And afterwards he was like, oh, they had butter in those grits. And we were like, yeah, Kurt, they come with butter. He's like, I didn't know they were going to have butter in them. He goes, but I didn't want to waste them. I ordered them, so I ate them. But he's like, can we go to the gym after? And we were like, okay, sure. And he did
to burn off that butter.
He did 60 minutes on the treadmill. And then he did 45 minutes on the Stairmaster because he had that thing of grits.
I'm getting tired just listening to it.
I was like, holy shit. Like, wow, he's intense. Like, yeah. he's all about it. Like, he means it.
That's commitment.
And, I mean, have you ever read his book?
No.
Wait, he has a documentary on Peacock, though, yeah. And I think they talked about his training for the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And how he did I think they called it exhaust training. Yeah. Where the training starts when you're totally exhausted. When you've completely gotten, you've done more than any, like 99% of people in the world can do. Then you start your actual training. I mean, I watched him in the gym that he would take I remember one day watching him, we're training back. And so he's doing, you know what seated rows are, where you sit and you do the rows, right, with the weight stack. And he's pulling on the weights so hard. He's got the whole stack. I think it was probably 300, 400 pounds, whatever it was. He's got the pin at the very bottom, so the whole weight stack. and he's pulling it so hard that the weight stack is crashing up against the top of the rack.
How did it not break?
And I'm just going, I remember looking like, oh, what the hell are you doing? Because I'm used to training like controlled, being whatever. And Steve just looking at him, just shaking his head. And he's like, Al, that's just fucking how he is. It's just what he does. He just doesn't know how to not be intense. And I'm just like, oh my God. And so he finished. I'm like, Kurt, you're going to fucking break the machine. You're going to fucking tear a muscle. What are you doing? And he's like, you got to be intense. He's like, got to be intense. You got to be more, you got to want it more than anyone else. And I'm like, all right, but you're going to break the machine, man. Like no one else is going to be able to use the machine. Jeez.
That's funny.
Yeah, but no, he was awesome. Kurt's, I say was, he is. He's awesome. He's a great guy.
I remember we watched that documentary about him, and he has that ability for that. How can I put it? Like to mentally put yourself in a place of there are no other options.
Yeah.
So this has to be it. This is my goal, and I need to achieve it. Anyway, I need to do it, and I will do it. Because there's so many people. We talked about it in a previous episode, Got Goals, why people don't reach their goals and why they give up and how easy it is to give up. And then there's this man who's just like full on beast mode, attacking his goals. Like,
oh, yeah.
That is the only option in life. And it's awesome because that is an option to look at it that way when you have a goal. And that's what he did. So it's really cool.
Yeah, he was awesome, and just like
you would tell me how nice
the nicest
he was.
guy.
Yeah.
Like I'll give you an example. So before I went to Memphis, I had an allergic reaction to something. I don't know what it was, but I want to say that have you ever heard of liquid egg whites?
Yeah.
I used to drink those out of the carton, just drink them, and they were pasteurized. So I figured, they must be all right to just drink them like that. So I had been doing that for a couple of months because I knew I was going to Memphis. So I wanted to get leaner and I wanted to get put on a little bit more muscle. So I needed the extra protein, and I hated doing protein shakes and all that. So I was trying to figure out ways to get extra protein in, and that's what I was doing. And I think it was that because I had an allergic reaction and I just broke out in like acne all over my face and my body. And it's funny because I was not doing steroids at the time. I had not yet tried steroids, but I broke out as if I was. I had like the acne on my chest and my back and all over my face, which is essentially what happens to a lot of people when they do take steroids. But I hadn't done them yet. I had not tried them yet. So I had this, it was like an allergic reaction. I remember going to the dermatologist and him saying, yeah, you had an allergic reaction to something. Because when I was a teenager, I had to go on Accutane because I had real bad acne, but that had cleared it up. And whatever it was, somehow now it came back like with a vengeance. So I knew I'm going to Puerto Rico. I'm going to Memphis, and I'm going to be on TV every Saturday. So my mom at the time was a Mary Kay consultant. So she taught me how to put makeup on my face so that when I would wrestle, I could put this on so that it wouldn't show because it was bad. Like it was just all over my face, all over my body. So luckily, when I tanned, it helped to clear up a lot on my body, but my face, it was really like these mounds of like just awful acne everywhere. So Kurt, one day, Steve, I forget what Steve was doing, but he didn't want to go to the gym. So Kurt's like, you want to go to the gym? I'm like, yeah, I'll go. So it's just Kurt and I, and we're going to the gym, and he's like, I remember he had a dip in, and he's just kind of looking around, and he's spitting while he's driving, and he I could tell he wanted to say something, but he was kind of beating around the bush, talking, just the way he was talking. And I'm like, so I finally go, Kurt, what's on your mind? He goes, well, I don't know how to say it, but have you ever thought of going to see a doctor about your skin? And I'm like, oh, you talking about my acne? He goes, yeah, it's like, he goes, look, I got a doctor. I can give you their number and I can get him in touch with you and they could put you on this stuff called, I forget what it was, but he's like, he goes, do you want me to do that for you? And And I'm like, no, it's okay. He's like, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you gotta remember, you gotta clear that up because it's really bad. Like how it can't be. He's like, I can't feel comfortable. He goes, every time you take a bump, you're bleeding. Because I would. That's the thing. Every time I would take a bump, my back would split open. And if somebody would give me a chop, my chest would split open. Yeah, it was bad. And even a grazing punch or even me like making a face or wincing, my face would bleed. Like it would crack. Now I had makeup on my face, so you couldn't see the acne because my mom taught me how to do it. And I got pretty good at using I don't even remember what it was, but I got good at using it. And, but yeah, you would see like, I'll find a tape of some of my old stuff. You could see like occasionally if you get like, you could see blood trickling down the side of my face and stuff. Cause it was just acne that would just break open and my skin would just bleed. Yeah, it was pretty bad. So he was trying to be delicate and gentle about it so as to not hurt my feelings. And I remember we get to the gym and we spent like 10 minutes in the car, him just talking about, I think you can get through this. And I'm just listening to him and I'm just like, I can't believe that this guy's having this conversation with me. And I remember just being like, I'm going to let him just keep talking. It's okay. It's cool. And he gets done and I finally look at him, I go, hey, Kurt, it's just an allergic reaction. The doctor said it's going to pass. It should take a few weeks before whatever gets out of my system. Yeah. And he put me on some antibiotics and whatever. And Kurt's like, oh, so you're going to be okay? I'm like, yeah, man, but thanks for caring.
That's so sweet though.
I appreciate it. He was like so nice about it. Like he was just like the nicest guy. And I remember just like anytime we'd go out to eat, because we'd go out to eat after every show and whatever. And it was, kayfabe was still a thing down there. You still had to protect the business. But remember now, Steve and Kurt live together and they're hating each other in all the shows,
but all Steve has to do is Clark Kent himself, put on a hat and sunglasses and nobody knows. That's the beauty of it. Steve would put on his hat, he'd put on a pair of his regular glasses, and no one knew who he was. Nobody had a clue. It was amazing. He'd put his hair up in his hat, and nobody had a clue. We'd go out everywhere. We'd go out to eat together. Like we'd drive to the shows together. We'd leave. What would happen was Kurt and I Steve would leave first. Anytime we'd leave, he'd get in the car. He'd drive like a block away, and then we would walk. Not a block, but he'd drive further down. We'd walk, pretend like we're going to get in a car, and we'd get into his car. And we'd take off. That's how we'd do stuff. And he'd drop us off and we'd walk in and then he'd park and walk in, a couple minutes later. That's how we'd do stuff. Yeah. But yeah, we'd go into restaurants all the time together. People would always come up, recognize Kurt, always going up asking for autographs. No one had a clue who Steve was. No one had a clue who I was either because I was nobody yet then. I was nobody. But everybody knew Kurt, and he would sign everybody's autograph. And if people caught us leaving a show, forget it. Forget it. It was just, he would sign everyone's autograph. He'd take whoever wanted to take a picture, if anybody had a camera, because no one really had phones yet then. And he would just sit and talk to people and be like, all right, dude, let's go. Kurt, let's go. I remember every time we'd sit at wherever we're eating, Kurt, you can't do this. You gotta hurry up. You can't do this. Like, what happens when you go up to TV? What happens when you go on the road? You got to get to places. You can't just stop and talk to everybody. It's like, I know, man, but it makes these people's day. We gotta make these people's day. They're fans. We got to take care of them. And we're just like, remember Steve being like, dude, you're gonna get heat on the road. I just want to interject because I love that. I think it's wonderful. He has the mentality of like, they take care of us, we take care of them too.
Right.
Because before, when I had mentioned like I was the opposite of you, like I would talk to people and other people in the back would make comments like, oh, dumb marks. And they use the word mark in a derogatory way. And that's why I hated anytime somebody in wrestling would call a fan a mark, because I would argue, well, if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be here because nobody would pay to see you. And it's a balance. And you want to treat people, to me, with kindness and respect. until they give you a reason not to. Obviously, if you're keeping kayfabe and you're a heel character, you can just walk past. You don't have to sign autographs. I'm not saying you have to stop and talk to everybody. But when people are trying to go out of their way to say something nice or do something nice, to me, it's a good thing to acknowledge it. Say thank you. Say hello. So I love hearing that about Kurt Angle, treating people so kindly, because I feel not enough people do that in the world, just in general, to each other, like being kind enough to each other.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know what happened after, because I mean, I was only with Kurt and Steve for a short time there, but
he had already won a gold medal at this point.
Yeah, he was already an Olympic gold medalist, so he already had that fame. I remember him telling me his story. I'll tell you actually after. I'm sorry, I don't mean to do that to the audience, but it's probably, I'll tell you after. But I remember there was I remember him missing a flight one time because he was signing autographs. I do remember that, because he was going every Monday and Tuesday. He would fly out to wherever WWF was, and he would wrestle dark matches. And I remember at the time he was wrestling Owen Hart. All the dark matches. That's what he was doing. He was wrestling Owen Hart everywhere they went for, like, I think it was like 6-7 weeks that he was doing that. And it was just essentially to get him used to how the TV was set up, how TVs were run, and that kind of thing, because they were planning on bringing him up eventually. And I remember him, like Steve going to the airport to pick him up and him not being there. And Steve being like, where the hell's Kurt? He's supposed to be on this flight. And it was because Kurt missed his flight because he got hung up signing autographs, like at a restaurant or something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, let's end this on a funny note.
Sure.
How about you share just a couple of the funniest or your favorite ribs that you did to somebody, or you witnessed to somebody, that witnessed being done to somebody?
Oh boy.
Or maybe that happened to you.
Oh wow. There's so many. You gotta be kidding me. I remember one time convincing a security guard that we were going to put the championship belt on him.
What?
This was when Steve and I, after Steve was released from WWE, he moved back to New Hampshire, and we started up the Wrestling Federation of America, the WFA, and we were running shows pretty regularly. We do like 4 or 5 a month, and we were doing a show in Littleton, New Hampshire, and on the way up, I can't remember whose idea it was or whatever, or why, but we decided, so I'm going to say we, because I don't know if it was my idea, his idea, whatever, but it was, he and I would always ride up to the shows in the ring truck. Steve would be driving, and I'd always be riding shotgun. And we'd have 2 hours where we'd talk about what we're going to do on the show. We'd put the show together, whatever, and try to figure out what we're going to come back with, because we'd run that place every 6-7 weeks is what we tried to do. And so on the way up there, we were talking about this. He was a security guard. You know him. His name is George. He's got a beard, George. You know George, the kid.
Yes,
George.
Yes, I know George.
And I want to say he was a security guard at the time, or maybe he had just started wrestling.
Oh, like wrestling security. I thought you meant like a legit security guard.
No, sorry. He was a student at the wrestling school. And then...
Yeah, GK.
Yeah, and so...
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
Yeah, he's a great kid. I say kid.
He's an adult.
But he's a great guy. Yes.
He's a lovely
I haven't spoken to him in years, but great guy.
Yeah.
So I can't remember exactly how, but I went and told him, hey, listen, tonight, I took him all like aside and told him all, I said, look, tonight we're going to do something real special. I said, but you can't tell anybody that this is happening. It's got to be, we're surprising, we don't want anyone to know, but it's going to be a surprise for everybody. We're putting the belt on you tonight. And he's just like, what? I go, no, really. He's like, you're messing with me. I go, no, listen, this is what, and Steve and I came up with this elaborate thing on the ride up. And so I lay it all out for him. And I managed to convince him that we're putting the belt on him tonight. And it comes to, it comes time to where he's at the curtain and I'm getting him ready. I'm like, all right, so this is what you're going to do. I'm like, get ready. This is it. Here we go. And I'm getting ready to give him his cue. to like, all right. And I'm looking out the curtain. I'm like, all right, ready? You ready? And he's like getting himself psyched up. He's getting himself psyched up because I'm telling him how to act, what to do. I'm like trying to produce the whole thing. And then he's about to go out. I'm like, dude, we're ribbing you. You seriously thought we were going to put the belt on? And he's just like, oh. Yeah, so that was a funny one.
I'm giving him the death stare. Like, that is mean.
Monique's giving me the death stare because I messed with somebody like that.
I don't find
that's
that
a
funny.
Harmless, practical joke. No one got harmed.
I get it.
Maybe his feelings were hurt, but that's all. It was funny. It was funny at the time. Maybe I didn't explain it as funny as it.
I'm sure he felt the heavy weight of disappointment.
I'm sure George remembers looking back on it fondly. I'm sure he does. But that was a funny one that I pulled on. So I mean, I've done other like stupid stuff when I was younger. Like when I first started, I at a job that I worked at, I had access to padlocks, so I'd get these master locks, and I would put them on people's like their gear bags. One guy came in. He had bought these like new jeans, and he was just showing. He was so proud of these jeans. So I took padlocks and put them on all the belt loops of his jeans.
Was he like Michael Scott on the Casual Fridays when he'd wear his denim jeans?
So he had like these like whatever. So yeah, I padlocked his jeans. So yeah, that was one I did. I went padlock crazy for a while, where I was padlocking people's like the eyelets of their sneakers. I'd like jam the padlock in and lock it, so they'd be walking around with locks on their sneakers. We moved a car one time, myself and two other guys. There was a kid that he'd just bought a new car, and it was like it was a new car, whatever. But we're stupid young punk. I say young, we're 22, 23. We picked up and moved his car because he did that thing that people do where they take up like 3 or 4 spaces.
Oh.
And it was in a small parking lot where all the wrestlers would park. And so he was taking up like 4 spaces. So we went and we picked up his car and moved it.
Okay, because at first I'm like, that's mean to do that to somebody. But if they did that, that's karma.
And not only that, but he was just like, I'm not going to say who he was or his name or anything like that, but he was what we like to call steak.
Oh, I remember steak.
Steak.
Yeah.
Steak is like it essentially means like someone who's lame.
I remember
but there's different varying degrees of steak.
Yes.
You could be that's pretty steak.
And there's steak.
And there's steak.
Yeah.
Or steak.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's different varying degrees of steak, but he was pretty steak.
I remember when somebody like wrote something and used the word steak, and I misread it as steak.
Steak.
Like, steak.
That dude's what? Steak.
Like, that makes no sense. What? Steak? Oh, steak? I don't get it. I'm just going to share a little story because
sure.
I just find it so adorable.
Okay.
So when I got into wrestling, part of what the new people did, the people training for chaotic wrestling at the Chaotic Training Center, you would have to go flyer for shows. So you'd have to like go out, do all the flyering.
Sure.
And I remember one night it was Sledge, who he was a wrestler, and he would come around and just help because he was really nice. And he was the sweetest guy. He would always like stay late with me after class to try to help me with things that I had a hard time with. And he did a great job explaining. Just wonderful human being. So he, myself, and our friend Evan, Ilya Markopoulos. Evan was like 16 at the time, I think. And he was new to wrestling, but he joined before I did, so he had been around longer. So he and Sledge are in the car, and I'm in the back seat. And we're driving around Lawrence, Mass. And before I go into a convenience store, Sledge pulls over, stops the car. He and Evan turn around, and they go, "Has anyone told you about kayfabe yet?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" But it was the cutest thing because I had heard people say, "Hey, kayfabe," but they're going into like the different meanings of it. And it was just like so sweet the way they're like, okay, we're going to smarten her up. And then, so I go into this convenience store and I'm putting up a flyer. And these Spanish gentlemen come in. There were 3. And they were on the larger side, like very tall, muscular. Now they're outside and they can see these men come in and they're talking to me. And I'm in like my plaid skirt and fishnets, punk rock me. And they try, trying to make conversation about my tattoos. And they don't speak a lot of English. And I'm being nice. I'm like, lucha libre. I'm like, it's wrestling. You should come to the show. And we're getting along great, me and these 3 gentlemen. And it was so funny because I see them like looking and watching. And I get in the car. They're like, we were ready to go in there. And I'm like, why? Well, those 3 guys, we thought they were messing with you or they were going to start something. I'm like, no, I was just talking to them. But like, it was so cute because they were being very protective. But at the same time, if you were really that worried, you would have come in sooner. But it was really sweet. And they were just wonderful human beings. But when you brought up Steak, it made me think about the first time I was told about kayfabe.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just a happy little memory.
I'm trying to think if I was ever ribbed. I honestly can't remember other than like when I first started in wrestling, somebody put icy hot in my face and down my trunks in a battle royal. And I still to this day don't know who it was, but I didn't sell it. It was hard, but I didn't sell it. Selling it is, I didn't put it over. Like I didn't act like I was upset or anything like that. I just pretended like nothing happened to me. I did my best to not show the effects of it, because
which is the best thing you can do in that
situation. It is, because in wrestling, if you sell it, if you sell a rib, you've now made yourself a target, and people are just going to target you. It's going to escalate and get even worse until they drive you away.
I don't think anyone ever ripped me.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, and that's like I said when I first it was like probably my 4th or 5th show ever, and it was in a battle royal.
I was just thinking, if they did, I think it probably went over my head. I didn't even realize it.
But yeah, I did my fair share of them when I was younger. It was all just stupid stuff, though. Nothing too extravagant or elaborate. I mean, when I was younger, I was a practical joker. Like I was one of those idiots that would prank call people and do funny voices and stuff like that.
Cranky anchors.
Throwback. Yeah, there you go. And I would keep people on the phone forever, just doing all kinds of stupid stuff. I used to do stuff like that all the time when I was younger. And so it naturally escalated a little bit when I got into wrestling, and it was like kind of considered something you did back then. But again, I don't know how it is now. I've been removed from wrestling and the business for the last decade, so I'm sure it's a lot different. But,
yeah.
So that was but some stories from wrestling. There's a million more, and I'm sure we'll talk again about this kind of stuff, but I think this is a good time to wrap it up.
I always enjoy hearing these stories. It's always really fun for me because I came into it so much later than you. But I will say some of my favorite memories, when you talked about you and Steve driving 2 hours and the conversations you had, it just made me think about how some of my favorite memories were our conversations in the car going to and from shows.
What would we talk about?
Well, we would, on the way up, usually we talk about whatever, but it was just really fun. And on the way home, we would talk about the matches. And after we started working together, especially going home, I would always be looking forward to hear your thoughts about how you thought I did in the match. Because even though I had such a small role, I felt because Alex would never blow smoke up my ass. He would never just give me a compliment to give me a compliment. Like, you have to earn it. He's not going to say I did a good job if I was shitty. If he says I did a good job, he truly felt I did a good job. Otherwise, if I was the drizzling shits, he would tell me in those words. But I would always look forward to hear, because I would go out there and just want to do the best I could. Well, because it was fun and I wanted myself to look good and everyone else, but I didn't want to disappoint him. I didn't want to make him look bad. And it felt so good, when he would tell me when I did a good job, that it was like, because I know I worked hard for it. I really did a good job and I earned that. So I'd get excited. And when we go home and you're like, yeah, you did a great job. You didn't fuck up. And I'm like, woohoo! I didn't fuck up. Yeah.
I probably said it just like that too, didn't I?
On occasion. Yeah. But there were a few times where, I'd have to do a spot, something would come up, and you tell me how well I did. And that felt really good. But just talking about the matches with you, because you always spoke about it as a wrestler, and I always talk about it as a fan. And it was really cool to have those different perspectives come together in a conversation with your background and your experience, and then just my love for watching wrestling. And it was just always so fun.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we did have a lot of fun.
We did.
Always have fun with you, my lady.
And I have fun with you, my love. Do you remember driving up to Littleton, and it was my birthday, and we stopped in Tilton, and we stopped to get like coffee or something from Dunkin's or Starbucks.
Yeah.
And I got mad at you for something. Like, I think you were being jerky to me. Like, I got upset with you for something. And this was like, we had been watching a lot of the other guys. And you said something, and I can't remember what I said, but I had like a really snappy comeback that shut you right up. And I go, that didn't go the way you thought it would, did it? And we just started quoting other guys.
Yes. I vaguely remember this.
But that was like, we'd be so goofy. Even like if like we did something to make each other mad for like a moment, like it's a moment. And then we go back to having fun.
People probably hear us talking about how much like we enjoy being around each other and everything. They probably still like, okay, shut up already. But
we've been together for almost 15 years. So.
It's true though. Like
it's damn true.
I cannot stay mad at you. And I very rarely get upset or mad. I'll get annoyed about just something stupid.
You get grumps.
And what happens? I always, after I come and apologize and go, okay, I was being a little, that you didn't deserve that. Yeah. I'm sorry. Have we ever stayed mad at each other for more than like an hour at the most? Like the absolute most?
I can't think.
Exactly. I can't even remember the last time you and I had a fight. Like it's rare. It's very rare.
But again, those drives to shows for wrestling, it was just like, even like if somebody says something to tick the other person off, by the time we got there, no matter how long the ride was or how short it was all good.
Yeah, we already, it was fine. Yep. Good times.
It was great times.
On that note, we'll revisit wrestling again someday soon, I'm sure. But on that note, let's wrap it up. Yeah. I am the Golden Greek, Alex Arion. I've been joined, as always, by my beautiful, lovely, gorgeous wife, my trophy wife, the lovely Monique.
And you've been listening to the Homewrecker podcast.
We love hearing from and interacting with our hearers and watchers. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter
@HomewreckerPod.
You can also visit our website,
homewreckerpodcast.com.
where you can check out past episodes and pick up some Homewrecker podcast gear from our online store.
Also, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're hearing or watching our show. That way you can be notified whenever a new episode drops. We're on all major podcasting platforms, and you can check out the video versions of our show at YouTube and Brighteon.
You can also find Monique in a few places online as well.
I'm on Twitter @_MoniqueGiselle_. If you're interested in a tarot reading, organite, incense, candles, and other cool things, you can go to my website, tarotbymonique.com. Or if you're interested in hypnotherapy, you can go to innerstandingshypnosis.com to schedule a free 20-minute consult. And follow me on Twitter @MoniquePCHT. And Alex, how can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @TheAlexArion, and you can check out my website, alexarionfitness.com.
And of that's too much to remember, we get it. That's why we put it all in our show notes.
Thanks for spending your time with us, and we appreciate all of your support.
We do. Thank you. We love you. Many people are unaware just how much hypnotherapy can help them, or think it's only to help lose weight or quit smoking. But there is so much more hypnotherapy can do. It can help with stress, anxiety, insomnia, phobias, performance enhancement, connecting with your spirit guides and higher self. You can even discover past lives and your life between lives. Heal traumas, break habits, find your deepest truth, or just have fun discovering who you really are, all from the comfort of your home. I'm Monique Pliakis. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I want to help you. Schedule a free consult by going to www.innerstandingshypnosis.com. That's INNERSTANDINGSHYPNOSIS.com. Inner Standings Hypnosis. Find your power and ignite your inner light.